Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad that you found us here on YouTube and have joined our tribe of survivors of narcissistic abuse. Now, one of the major reasons why narcissistic abuse kind of stands out and how you almost have to seek out other people that have been in our situations is because it's an abuse that's actually very hard to explain to someone who hasn't been through it, because it's not the breakup of a regular relationship, and it's not the breakup of the kind of abusive relationship that is easy to see. There's people that are in relationships that are violent, and there's hitting and yelling and going on, and that's an abusive relationship. Now, things like that also do something called a trauma bond, and we as survivors of narcissists also had a trauma bond with our narc, but it's extremely difficult to get across to people, like Stockholm syndrome. If someone gets kidnapped, and then tables were turned, and then the victim wants to stay with their kidnapper, that a trauma bond was created. There's other abusive relationships where the husband is beating their wife and the wife stays with them, and no one can see why. It's because there was a trauma bond created. Now, the trauma bond that's created with us when we were with our narcissists is because we got love bombed at the beginning, right? It was so perfect. And as, the relationship goes on and, their mask starts to slip and bad things start happening, well, we stay in this relationship because we kind of want that love bombing again. we're kind of hanging on and hoping we can just work through things and get back to that. That's how it looks like on our end. And the thing is, because it's an abusive relationship and we're dealing with a narcissist, they have the ability to abuse us in a lot of certain ways, and then they can see that, they're going to lose some fuel, so they'll start being really nice to us again and do things for us and reinforce everything and be loving and to extract more fuel from us. Right? And that's where the real abuse is, right? That's the trauma bond that gets formed, and I remember there were so many times when with my narc, looking back at it, he wasn't someone to yell or to hit or anything like that. He was a very, covert narcissist, and that's why it's really hard to explain to people about the abuse I suffered, because at the time it didn't feel like he was being abusive, but he was. Like for instance, I'm not a very they will do things that are so evil when you look back at it. During the love bombing stage, when you have all those deep talks and they want to know everything about you, right? They're so into you, and they're so into you like no one's been into you before. And it's so painful because you realize that during that time they were just finding everything they could about you, so they would know your faults to play them against you later. Because they're narcissists. They're not interested in anyone but themselves, and what people think of them. That's all they care about. You'll never ask. You'll never see like a narcissist, finding out about other people that has nothing to do with them. They are so uninterested. And the only time that they seemed interested in you or anything about you was at the very beginning, during the love bombing stage, and they were trying to find out things about you, like even your faults, about you, to use them against you later. My narc, I had told him that, one of the things I just don't like, I'm not good at, is writing. Like I've always been a horrible writer, you know. Like I'm one of those people that will, you know, if I had a book report to write when I was in school, I would write it and then I would tear it up and start all over. I would write it, tear it up, and start all over. It took me forever. You know, words just did not flow very well for me ever. And even as an adult, you know, I worked in corporate lending. You know, I worked with numbers. That was way better for me. But whenever I had to like do things like write emails, man, those emails would be so short, just barely enough to get my point across. And that was, you know, and that's, you know, having to do any kind of writing in my life. It was something that I didn't like and I was never good at. And I kind of confessed that to my narc, you know. Well, a few years later, you know, we're running a business and he made it seem like the only important thing that I had to do for our business is email our, you know, email list every day and write emails about, you know, promotions and stuff. And I'm sitting there going like that's like my worst nightmare. My biggest, most important job all of a sudden out of nowhere is to write emails. And then when I try to bring him in, like, it would be emails about, you know, topics that I didn't even necessarily know about, and he wants me to write them. I'm like, this is, like, I told him, you write them. And then he would get angry at me saying, no, this is my job, you know. Like, and even if I had to, you know, call him over and I'm like, well, what do you think, you know, before I send this out to all these thousands of people, he would come in storming into the office and like mad, like this is wasting his time. And you, like, why would, and that's like an example of the abuse, right? Why would I tell him the most thing I hated the most was having to do like any kind of creative writing, and then he would turn that into my most important job in our business, out of the thousands of other things that I could do. And, you know, and that was just like an example of the kind of, he knew that I didn't like doing that, and he would force me to do it and get angry with me and use it as a tool to abuse me with. Now, it could be like just a lot of other, like there was a lot of other things that went on with our business that I won't bore you guys with, but it was apparent as time was going on, you know, that he would scold me for things that I needed to do. And then after I would, you know, finish doing, you know, other tasks, then he would just praise me so much. But even though he's the one who got me to be miserable doing things in the first place, you know, and that's the trauma bond, you know, that's what they're doing all this on purpose. They're doing this actually to get you to stay with them throughout the horribleness of the relationship, right? And to see your reaction during these times, you know, is actually fuel for them. It's negative fuel that they're getting from you, you know. And this usually happens at the beginning, you know, the trauma bonding usually happens at the beginning of the devaluing stage, you know, because all the positive fuel is pretty much gone, and now they're starting to get negative fuel out of you, and it happens through trauma bonding, you know. And when you go through things like that, that's why it's when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's very hard to explain to people that what they did to you and why it was painful, and it's hard to get it across that it was abusive, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's a hidden abuse that's hard to explain. And sometimes you think that it's all your fault. Like I thought at the time, like say with the emails, I thought that this was my fault, that, okay, I'm just not good at this. I need to get better. I need to, you know, work on things, you know, like it was, I put it all on myself. But the thing is, what kind of husband does that to his wife? You know, puts her in misery on purpose for his own benefit. because these were emails that were going out to his people that I had nothing to do with and didn't know any part of that group of people in the topics. But he was doing this to almost torture me. And you don't do that to your wife. Like a loving husband and partner wants to see you succeed in the things that you love. They don't scold you because you won't do something that you hate for their benefit. So it seems clear now, but when you're involved with a narcissist, that type of abuse is it's hard to pinpoint, and it's hard to explain to people that haven't been through a love bombing and a devaluing and a discard, and trying to make sense of what went wrong and the things that happened, and that's why that's another reason why I started this channel, because we're the only ones that can really understand each other with the type of things that happened within a relationship, that they were abusive, but they don't have to be physically abusive or even verbally abusive. The trauma bond and the damage that was done is the same, but it's just hard to explain to other people that haven't been through it. So I'm really glad that you guys found us here on YouTube and are joining our tribe of survivors of narcissistic abuse. Please leave me your comments and let me know other examples you might have experienced during your trauma bonding with your narc, because some people are in doubt about whether or not they really were with a narcissist, because some of them are hidden. There's lots of different grades of narcissists. I put my narc on one end of the scale, and I'll put Donald Trump on the other end of the scale, and everything in between, right? And so, because I think my narc was very, very hidden, I had to battle with the things that happened within my relationship quite a bit to kind of reinforce to myself that, I'm not insane. These things were abusive and they did happen. So thank you guys for listening to me. I look forward to reading your comments, and I'm glad that you've joined our tribe here on YouTube of survivors Post Narcissist.